What's up, NBA fans? Dom2K on the mic, and to be honest, I never saw myself making a video about this because I'm not too hot on the NCAA and college basketball. I'm just not really that into it. But after watching Ben Simmons' documentary last night called One and Done, I got some cool insights, and I wanted to make a video on why I believe the one and done rule should be eliminated. Now, if you didn't know, about a decade ago back in the year 2005, the NBA made it a rule that the player had to be 19 years old during the draft calendar year, or at least 1 year had to pass since they graduated. So even if you got held back for a year or two, you still couldn't go to the NBA until a year after high school. So the NBA didn't specifically say you had to go to college before becoming an NBA player. However, they did mysteriously and conveniently leave this 1 year gap of time in between the time that you graduate high school and are eligible for the NBA. I realize that people feel very strongly about this argument, and I'm on the side of I definitely think players should have a choice between leaving high school straight for the NBA or going to college, and in this video I'm going to give you some reasons why. Number 4, the NBA doesn't actually give you a choice. The best way to describe this option is to basically say it's an ultimatum, and we've all been in one of those. Somebody's giving us options to do something, but really only one of the options makes sense, so they're only making us feel like we have a choice when we really don't. Well, it's funny because that's exactly what the NBA is really doing to the high school players when they say you don't have to go to college, you just have to wait a year before you play in the NBA, because in the meantime you only have about 4 other options, really only 3 other options actually, and none of them are as good as college. You can independently train for a year, which no aspiring professional basketball player is going to do because you want to play against high-level competition before you try to go to the NBA. You can go to the D-League, which it's very ironic that you can be 18 and go to the D-League, but you can't be 18 and go to the NBA anymore, go figure. And no high school superstar is going to the D-League. That's where you go when you're on your last leg trying to make the NBA. You can go overseas, and no high school superstar is going to do that because you're not going to get any kind of media attention over there. Your stock is going to drop. Nobody in America is going to know who you are. And on top of that, you're going to be an 18-year-old kid experiencing the world by yourself, living on your own, supporting your own. That's not happening. Or you could bypass all that and just spend a year in college where you can potentially get a shoe deal. You're going to get tons and tons of media attention like you're already in the NBA from all the sports media outlets. And truth be told, being an aspiring NBA star living on a college campus is probably the closest thing to heaven. Now, there's not necessarily anything bad about anything I listed here because who wouldn't want to be a star basketball player on a college campus? I just don't support the fact that they don't have a choice to go straight to the NBA if they wanted to go ahead and bypass college like Ben Simmons did, because he specifically said my dream was the NBA, not college, and so therefore college was basically a waste of a year of his career. But just sit tight because as this video goes on, this point would definitely make a little bit more sense. Number 3, most players don't develop in 1 year. Now, this is where I'm going to get into the idea that I believe this 1 year that players have to go to college is basically just to exploit them for money because the system doesn't really make sense for what they says it's supposed to do. So if you let the NBA tell it, they're going to tell you that players need to go to that college for a year for all types of growth, personal growth, let their bodies mature, let their games mature. But the reason I don't agree with that is because that year in college, some players go to college for a year and still come out to the NBA needing to be polished before they actually enter the star potential that they have. I'm not going to say that their year of development does absolutely nothing for their games, but don't you think that if it was really about maturing and getting more polished and developed players in the NBA, that they would extend that rule to say maybe you need to spend 2, 3, or 4 years in college? All I'm trying to say is the draft really seems like a stroke of luck because you never know what kind of transition a player is going to make from college to the NBA. We see it time and time again where a player looks like a superstar in college and he's doing all these things, and then he gets to the NBA and he's just a role player. He doesn't turn into the superstar that anybody thought he was going to be. Then you have some special cases like Kyrie Irving who barely play any college basketball at all, then they come to the NBA and dominate the league pretty much their entire career. What I'm trying to say with this is the one and done thing is not about the development of a player, it's about money, okay? The NCAA rakes in a ton of money if you didn't know that. It's like, somewhere in the billions, right? And that's the whole reason they're being coerced into spending a year in college so they can be exploited for that year. Because if the NBA really wanted developed and polished players, they would put their foot down and say, okay, we need 3 years in college at minimum and then you can come here. Because there are a few players where it shows that works. Like you look at Michael Jordan spent 3 years in college, he came in, absolutely killed the league. Damian Lillard spent 4 years at a smaller college and then he came in the NBA really polished. Like he's been at very least a star since the day he walked in the league. So yes, if the NBA did demand 3 to 4 years out of a college student, they would probably come in more physically ready for the NBA and probably more mentally prepared after being on their own in college for 4 years. But again, it comes back to money. The NBA is not going to do that because that's not in their best interest. Say if they did have that rule, you had to spend 4 years in college. That means you have to wait 4 years to get to players like LeBron James and Kevin Durant when he was in college, and the NBA is damn sure not about to wait for that, especially not when those players might get an injury and never make it to the NBA. So it's really right in that safe spot for both the NCAA and the NBA to say, okay, we can give them a year, they can stay if they want, but more than likely they're going to go ahead and come to us. To sum this point up, I'm basically saying stop the bullshit. If you really want to develop the players, make them stay for 3 or 4 years, and if it's just about exploiting the players for the money, let them decide if they want the college experience or just let them come straight to the NBA from high school, because that 1 year in college is damn sure not polishing them into the players you want them to be. And it's also not doing much else for the development of the player mentally, as you're going to see in my next point. Number 2, the student athlete ploy is a complete joke. Now, to be honest, for me personally, I can only find a couple of things in the world funnier than this whole student athlete argument. To me, there's NBA 2K17's attempt at artificial intelligence, there's this year's presidential election, and then there's the student athlete argument. When I look at arguments for players staying in college before they go to the NBA, I always see this thing about the education that's being paid for and the skills that they're picking up and basically all this unrealistic stuff that's not really happening, and I gotta address it because it's a pet peeve of mine, to be honest. I'm actually going to lead this point with nothing but facts. So go to the NCAA website about academics and you're going to see that they tell you because intercollegiate athletics is a part of the fabric of the university, student athletes must be committed to academic achievement and the pursuit of a degree. Well, that's absolute bullshit, because when you look at the criteria for you to be able to play basketball for their school, all you have to do is maintain a 1.8 GPA for one semester and you are eligible to play basketball the next year. A 1.8 GPA, fam. Do you know in college that you can show up to your classes and breathe and you can get a 1.8 GPA? Commitment to academic achievements. 1.8 GPA. You know what? They might as well have just written on this site that they don't give a shit if these players ever go to class. They just want to make money off them, because to me, that's what it screams. And do you know why the NCAA sets it up that way? It's because deep down they're actually realistic. They know for a fact that a high school superstar going to college, the last thing on his mind is books and schoolwork, because he is less than 12 months away from signing a $1 million plus NBA contract. And for the time that he's in college, he's going to be partying, he's going to be training, he's going to be eating, and he's going to be sleeping. In a 24-hour day, there is absolutely no room for a college athlete getting ready to go to the NBA to pick up anything of relevance. These guys 9 times out of 10 are not about to major in biology, they're not going to study law, they're not going to become a doctor, they're not doing any of that stuff that's going to add more work onto their schedule, because that's getting in the way of them signing that contract. They need to focus on their body as much as they possibly can, and there's just no room for school in that when you're getting ready to make the NBA. You can even hear it from Ben Simmons himself, where he basically said, after I got that 1.8 GPA for the first semester, I didn't even go to class for the second semester because he didn't need to. All he needed to focus on was basketball. There was no need to put time in for anything else. And for players that don't want it, they shouldn't be made to be wasting time for it, because it's really about just making money off of them. And speaking of that, number 1, the players don't get paid. Now, this seriously could have been its own video, but I really thought it fit in nicely with this one, because it is a perfect example of why this one and done rule really should not exist, and you're gonna see the ultimate forms of exploitation in here. Now, there's people that on both sides of the fence for this argument, and they both feel extremely strong about it. Some people feel like college players should never get paid for what they do, and some people feel like they should definitely be getting paid for what they do. I'm on the side of they should, and I'm gonna back up my argument, and you don't have to agree, but it makes total sense. First of all, there is nowhere else in America that you can go where somebody can use your likeness, they can use your name, and they can use all that to sell merchandise off you, jerseys, and all this stuff without you getting a cut of it. I don't know about y'all, but if I see my name and my face on something, I'm coming to see y'all about a check. That's even more ridiculous when you take into account that the NCAA is a billion-dollar industry, and some of these players are coming from really poor backgrounds. Some of these guys are over here with their faces being plastered all over the TV, their jerseys are being sold, meanwhile their family can't pay the light bill back at home. And what makes that even worse, all this money they're generating, what if the players sustain some type of career-altering injury? Then they're never going to see any of that money, their family's going to stay in poverty. You know what, I encourage you guys to go look up Inky Johnson's story, alright? He was a football player, but it's the same exact principle, because he came from like dirt poor backgrounds. Man spent his entire life trying to get to the NFL, and he was only games away from making it to the NFL and becoming a millionaire. However, in one of those games, a dude hit him really hard, it busted some artery in his chest. Now he couldn't use his arm, can't go to the NFL, and I don't know what he ended up doing after that, but he did not ever see the type of NFL money he was going to see. That's just an example of how screwed up this can get. But let's look at the other argument here. So for the people who don't want players to get paid, they argue that A, the money is going to ruin the competition, and B, the player shouldn't complain because the education is paid for. Now, I'm going to go out of order, and I'm going to handle that second point first. First off, you're talking about this education. Now, if you go back to my previous point, I already showed you why that means nothing for a player that's clearly going to the NBA. That education does not mean anything to him at that time. However, let's look at the cost, okay? Let's say at minimum, this player is going to leave college and sign, let's just say, for instance, $1 million for 1 year, okay? Let's just say that, you know, this is based out of no type of logic. That's just the number, okay? If they're going to make $1 million that year, right? One semester at a really expensive college can cost about $50,000, so that comes out to about $200,000 for 4 years. $50,000 divides into $1 million 20 times. That means that NBA player who could be signing that $1 million contract could pay for his own semester 20 times over at that really expensive school if he needed to. You're not doing an NBA player a favor by saying, hey, you know what, we're going to make you wait a year and possibly get injured for this $1 million contract. However, we are going to go ahead and pay $50,000 for you so you can basically screw off for a semester while you train to be in the NBA. If this was a job offer and you were looking at it in terms of opportunity cost, you would basically looking at it to say, hey, I can make $50,000 here or I can make $1 million there. So your opportunity cost is extremely high right there. So I absolutely don't understand where anybody's coming from where they say, oh, these players should shut up and not complain. Their education is paid for. They can pay for their own education. If they even play in the NBA for 3 years, they can set themselves up to pay for their own education like many times over. So I don't get that argument. And that was without me mentioning the fact that the amount of money that it costs to go to school for a semester is infinitely less than these players actually generate when you talk about what they generate for the school playing sports. So yeah, it's really lopsided. That's a lopsided argument. And for the other argument where they say money ruins competition, you know what? I absolutely agree. There's no way a player that has everything he needs, like a house and a car and food, absolutely no way he's as hungry to make it to the league as a player who doesn't have all of that and doesn't get paid, right? So there definitely is a hunger factor there. My solution is then don't make them choose, because you make them go to college, you exploit them for money. If you don't want money to ruin the competition, then don't force them to go to college. It's that simple, because if you don't force the high school superstars to go to college, you won't have to pay them anyways. If the high school player decides that he and his family are starving and he thinks he's ready for the league, let him go ahead and go to the NBA, make his money, and do what he's going to do with his career. And then if he wants to come to college, then he has that option too, and then you don't have to pay him. That way you never really see any of the players that have an issue with not getting paid in college. So anyways, I'm pretty passionate about this subject, as you might be able to tell, and I don't want this video to go on for hours, so I'm going to go ahead and close up shop here. I just watched Ben Simmons' documentary last night, and it really sparked my thought about this, because I'm in college myself, and I know if I was in Simmons' situation where, you know, I'm being held away from my, you know, millions for a year, I'd probably be pretty pissed too. And I really think all players deserve that choice like they used to, because ultimately it comes down to, this has nothing to do with player development. They took away their choice so they could go to the NCAA and generate the NCAA money. That's literally what it's about, and that's pretty criminal. Definitely think that should be eliminated, and it should be a choice again. Everybody should be able to, you know, be made to do exactly what they want. I'm pretty sure you guys feel strongly about this topic. I know you do, because I see this debate everywhere, and I hear all types of different opinions. So make sure to leave your opinion in the comment section. I will read and reply to the comments. Thank you for watching. I'm Dom2K, and I'll see you guys on the next video.